Hi, so good morning everyone. So today I will be teaching you kung paano maging isang power poster maker or how to become a power poster maker. So in order to do that, today I'll be talking about the 6 basic design principles that you would need to master to become a power poster maker. So I know there are more than 6 principles, but I think that these 6 are all that you need in your toolkit and in your arsenal to remember when you make an awesome poster. And as real life superheroes being part of social good organizations, we always have to go back to our roots, to go back to our foundations, and to, of course, train and practice so that we can create key visuals for our advocacies and campaigns that will work. And even if you are already a really good designer, these are really great to get back to because sometimes we have this tendency to forget these principles when we are exploring and trying to make our posters. Okay, so for our first design
Sure.
principle, so first we have alignment. So alignment is basically when you line up your elements in a very orderly fashion. So sometimes they follow a certain path and they should be in appropriate positions when they are incorporated into your visual. So let's take this visual for example. So imagine nyo na lang to na parang isang squid ball. So as you can see here in the left, we have visual that is in alignment. So what does that mean? So it means that your elements are lined up in a certain way, that it follows a certain path, a straight path at that. And it's also organized in a way that it doesn't look cluttered or too messy or just placed in random. And with having said that, we now look to the right side wherein our elements are out of alignment. So this basically means na all our elements are just thrown off. They're not following a certain path or a certain line. As you can see here, yung mga ibang parts ng squid ball na hulog na sa stick. So that is what it means to be out of alignment. So there's no organization whatsoever when things are out of alignment. So I know what you're thinking. Like when you think of alignment, you usually think na everything should be justified. And I'm here to tell you like no, like even though I get the fact that people like to put their things in like justified, everything's pantay na pantay and they're sort of following like this box or rectangular shape. Sometimes you don't really have to do that to make your posters look nice. Sometimes you can explore other different alignments like these here, which I believe you are all familiar with, given that you work with a lot of documents every day in Word and Google and whatsoever. So we also have our left alignments and our center alignment and right alignment. So don't be afraid to explore on these different alignments because you'd also be surprised like how well these actually would work in your visuals, even better than just using justified all the time. So here are some poster examples of using really good alignments. So first we have here a slam poetry night poster. So as you can see here, it's using more of like justified and center alignments. And then here in the middle, it's actually a mix of all 4. So the visual, the one in the center, the photo in the center is actually in center alignment, but we see parts of the poster mainly on the text, which has different alignments. So meron nasa right, merong nasa left, meron din naka-justified sa isang corner. So you see here na parang even though there are different alignments being used in the poster, it doesn't make the poster look too messy or too overwhelming. There's still some kind of order and organization to it. And here naman on the last one, we have a poster wherein the text is mostly left aligned. And you can see here, it really just pops and like gives a lot of emphasis on the name of the event and all the other supplementary info of the event. So for the second design principle, we have hierarchy. So hierarchy is mostly focused on the way that you order your elements. And it's also the way in which you make some elements bigger so that people can focus on a certain thing that you want them to pay attention to or to remember. And then it's also making some of your elements smaller so that they don't overpower the one that you want people to focus and remember. And it's also just to help support that thing that you have made big in your poster. So let's look at these examples. So here we have different kinds of posters that play around with hierarchy. So for the first one, we can see here now the visual element that is larger is the headline and the visual. So mostly in our posters, that's what we want to make larger. So it's usually our headline and some visuals. So for example, like in ads, we see that what's usually big in those ads are the models and then the products and then also the campaign headline and all that. So we also want to apply that when we are doing our posters for our campaigns. And then for the supplementary information like the date and then the address maybe or more information about the event, you can make them smaller so that it doesn't overpower the headline and the visual that you want to show. So that's also the same with the poster in the middle. So it's by UNICEF. So it is a movement related to an advocacy on water. So we see here now the visual is very large. So it's a hand holding a glass. And then the one that's also large is the headline. So take a stand by sitting down. And if I would like to direct your attention to the third poster naman, it plays with hierarchy a little bit differently. So here kasi, if sometimes you don't necessarily need your elements to follow something like it starts off big and then it gets smaller. Sometimes you can play around with the hierarchy depending on what you want to have your audience focus on. So just like here in this poster, the art exhibition, it's like it goes big and then small and then big again and then small again. So you can do that, especially if you want people to remember as well something like the date of your event as well as the headline. So just make sure na all your elements work well together and nothing's overpowering one thing or another. Make sure they're all cohesive and working together. So for the third design principle, this is contrast. So contrast mostly has to deal with how well you match and complement your visuals and your elements together. So how well you match your colors and then how well you match your text and your icons, all of those things. So it's really good to have a good contrast of these elements so that your posters don't look like a mess and then so that it doesn't look like there's so much going on. So I'll show you some what I feel are kind of bad examples of like posters that don't use contrast very well. So for the first poster, so I know that red and blue are good colors that work well together, but you also have to remember like when you are picking out colors, you also have to take into account sometimes the shades of the colors that you use. So for example, in the first poster, like yeah, red and blue work together, but then the shades that they picked are kind of like they're not very pleasing to the eye. They actually hurt the eye because they kind of come off as too bright and too neon, and they're like overpowering one another. I'd also like to draw attention to the text that were used here. So it's kind of a mess as well because there's like one corner, there's like a very curly font, and then the next one, it's a very thick serif, sans serif font. So that's kind of distracting and kind of confusing, especially if you are the audience looking at this poster. It's like you don't really know where to direct your attention to. So for the one in the middle, it's an Adidas poster. And I think this is common naman in some sports posters. Like they like to play around with large text a lot. But I don't really think that this poster works so much just because the elements of the text, like some parts of the text are already like blending in with the white parts of the background. So when you are making a poster, it's best that all your elements work well together, and it's not good that you are sacrificing some parts of the poster of just because you have elements that look good already in the poster. What you want is to have your poster look good as a whole. So don't sacrifice anything in your posters, make it cohesive so that everything as a whole works well together. And for the third one, I think it's pretty obvious naman, like why it doesn't work, because it's the yellow over the white, so you can't really see anymore what's written on the poster. And that's one thing you always have to remember as well. Like when you're trying to make things work and make things contrast in your poster, always remember na you have to really make it work, and you shouldn't really focus so much on going for the aesthetic all the time. Like I know these posters are trying to look aesthetic or have that certain vibe, but if it's not working, then it's not working. So don't force it. So here are what I think are posters that actually have really good contrast. So as you can see in these posters, they use a lot of colors, but they actually work well together. And that's what you want to bring out. I'm not saying you have a lot of colors, but then pick colors that work well together, and pick fonts and other elements that work well together so that they can have a very cohesive look and a very appealing look. And when it comes to choosing your colors, it's best to also consult a color wheel so that you know which colors would complement each other. And with that, it's also good to have a color palette with you, have a color palette prepared for the visuals that you want to make. It can be extensive, just like the ones shown in the poster that I have showed you guys previously, but it can also just be limited. For me, I personally like limiting my color palettes just because I don't want to be too overwhelmed as well with the amount of colors that are in my poster. So that really helps, it also kind of like trains you to know when to hold back when it comes to using your elements. Okay, so for the fourth one, we have proportions. So when it comes to proportions, you always have to, it's basically the way that you size your elements in your poster. So there are some instances wherein you would use pictures and icons and all that things. So you have to like create and adjust them to the right size so that sometimes they have to be true to life, and then sometimes you want them as well not to overpower the other elements that you actually want to draw more focus on. So let's take these for example. So for this one, this is totally out of proportion because, of course, in real life, people are not as giant as a house. So you're making people look like they're so big, like compared to a house. So they look like a Titans from Attack on Titan, let's say. So what you want to do to fix that is to make them smaller, probably the size of a door frame, because in real life, that's how people are really sized in real life. So always remember that when you are making your posters. So make sure that the proportions are right, especially if you're putting other elements there. But if you really want to make people look bigger in your poster, let's say for this example, you can play around as well with the positions. So for here, we put the person in the foreground so that they're way bigger compared to the house that's in the background. So here are some examples of the way that proportions are used in posters. So as you can see here, you also have to pay attention to how you size your elements like these people, and of course in partnered with the headline and all the other text. So we just want them to be the right amount of size. It's up to you as well to, parang kung paano nyo siya itatansya, because it depends din naman what you want your poster to look like, but just always keep that in mind. So for the third poster naman, I guess you would say na, oh, bakit ito parang yung guitar naman, hindi naman siya ganun kalaki in real life. Like, guitars aren't as big as people or bigger than people in real life. Well, that's okay, but it's okay because it'll also depend on the purpose of why you made it bigger. So when you are creating your posters, you should have a purpose behind why you make your elements a certain way or why you adjust them in a certain way. Like, for example, this poster probably made the guitar way bigger compared to the people because it's used as a visual element to mimic sort of like a dance floor or a jam floor that people can like use to play instruments and dance and celebrate. So always have purpose behind the elements that you put in your visuals. Okay, so for the fifth one, and I think this is really important and what people tend to forget. So it's white or negative space. So this is basically the blank space that you have and put in your posters. So if mostly this white and negative space is usually used in a lot of minimalist posters, and sometimes they work, sometimes they're really good looking. I'm pretty sure a lot of people really like looking at minimalist posters, but it's also a challenge for you to actually like make it work really well. So here are some examples of how I think white space and negative space is used really well. So this helps people look at your poster and like it really like directs people's attention to what you are showing in the poster because there's not much going on. So that's actually really good for posters, especially if you have a powerful message to deliver. This can actually really work well. And what I love about using white or negative space in posters is that it has a lot of breathing space. So I think like when people try to make their posters, sometimes they forget that your posters need to breathe, you know, like me right now, like I kind of need to breathe. So sometimes your posters need that breathing space to, you know, so that people when they look at it, they don't feel too overwhelmed by what they're looking at. Because sometimes we focus too much, not, oh, I want to put this in the poster, I want to put all these elements in the poster, to the point na your posters start looking clunky and then there's just too much information and then it just seems too crowded. So what you want to do is to make it work, you really have to add that breathing space. So even though it hurts, like sometimes I know na parang there are elements that you don't want to take out in your poster, but sometimes you have to do it. So take out some elements or adjust them so that you can have more breathing space so that when people look at it, they don't feel too overwhelmed or they look at it and just, you know, find that pleasure, that sense of ease when they look at your poster. And finally, for the last, and I think is the most important design principle, it's balance. So when it comes to balance, you know, when you've done all the things already, like you got proper alignment, you've got proper portions, you have proper contrast and whatnot, it's now best to check if they all really work together in harmony. So what I usually do as an art director when I'm almost at my last stretch of like making the key visuals and the posters here in IXM, I usually like to take a step back from where I'm sitting, or I would like to stand at the back of the room a little farther from my laptop. And I would like to look at my poster as a whole and just see like which I probably still need to work on, to adjust, to fix, so that I can create that perfect balance of elements and all that things so that I can make my poster work. Okay, so those are the 6 basic design principles that I think would really help, and it's best to remember when you are making your very awesome poster. So we have alignment, hierarchy, contrast, proportions, white or negative space, and balance. So before I end my talk, I would also like to give some tips para maging isang power poster maker. So first is know what you can work with. So I know that a lot of people are not very skilled in using Photoshop, and that's okay. Like even I myself, I'm still currently learning how to get used to Photoshop. Heck, I don't even know how yet to really use Illustrator and all those Adobe softwares. So it's okay. It's best that you just know what you are comfortable with working it and using it to your advantage. So I've seen a lot of people who have made posters through PowerPoint and even Keynote, and then it would actually make you think na kala mo they made it in Photoshop. So just be comfortable with what you can work it, you know. Sometimes you have to just play with your strengths and use them to your advantage so that you can also wow people with your work. So having said that, I'd also like to share some tools that I love to use that are not Photoshop and which I think have really helped me in like the design process that I do here in IXM and Heroixm to be particular. So first is Canva. So I really love Canva, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you have also used Canva. So it's very simple to use, especially when you've got the hang of it. So there are a lot of templates here that you can use to make posters, to make social media posts and PowerPoints and all that. Actually, you can also make video already as well in Canva, and that's something I still have yet to explore. But I guess a tip na lang for me is also na I encourage you guys to explore in Canva. Like if you can make your own design from scratch while just using some bits and pieces from the elements available in Canva, then that would be great. So you can also learn to experiment and explore your style. Next is raw pixel. So with raw pixel, this is mostly where I get my backgrounds, my transparent icons and PNGs. So this is my go-to for all those things. Most of the stuff here are premium, but then there are good free elements here that you can use. Next is free pick. So as an art director, free pick has always been my go-to, especially for those stock photos. So if I need to find like Asian looking people in on the internet that are free, so I always go here in free pick. So also here in free pick are mock-ups that I like to use. So like if I need to mock up billboards or like some things for branding, I also go here. And if I need to create some headlines with this like really good design, so I also go here because there are a lot of editable files that you can use. You know, sometimes you just type them in and then it can instantly change already the visual. And lastly, this is like my holy grail. So this is Pinterest. So I love Pinterest so much. It's really helped me in like my day-to-day work because Pinterest is usually where I go to grab my inspirations for my posters. So for my pegs. So if I'm trying to look up for like designs that I want to do, but I can't really like picture it in my head yet, this is where I go to. So I just type in the kind of look that I want, and then a lot of these pictures show up in Pinterest, and then I use that as reference for the designs that I make. Okay, so for the second tip, it's don't be afraid to experiment. So now that you know what you can work with, it's also nice to like play around with the things that you can do. So don't be afraid to explore as well, like what other styles you can do, what other tools you can use so that you can really up your game when it comes to poster making. So what I like to tell you guys is to expand your comfort zone. So I don't really think that people should leave their comfort zone because it's a comfort zone for a reason. So when you are trying to become a designer, it's best that you just try to expand your comfort zone, you know, learn all these things, all these art skills, all these design skills until you are comfortable already with doing it and it's already become part of your, you know, comfort zone. So don't be afraid to experiment when you are designing. Then third is practice makes a poster. So I wouldn't say that practice makes perfect because like honestly, even until now, I don't get my posters perfect. I don't even know what a perfect poster is, honestly. But you know, like as artists, you know, we always have to adapt to like new changes here in the world, new styles, and then especially when we're working with clients, you know, sometimes we have to adapt to like what they want and then we have to improve in our skills. So what we have to do is just keep going at it, you know, learn what we can and then adapt if we can. And then as long as we just keep doing it and practicing and staying consistent, then we are able to create the poster that we envision. You know, it may not be perfect, but it's very difficult if you are just too fixated so much on like perfection, because it's really gonna tire you out and hurt you sometimes as well. And lastly, my favorite tip to leave with you guys is kiss. And it's not keep it short and sweet. It actually means keep it simple, stupid. So this is something I like to remind myself as well. So as designers, or like even people in general, I think we are just too focused on like, I want to have this like flashy poster. I want to have this most extravagant poster. Now we forget na to hold ourselves back and like, whoa, like sometimes you don't really need to keep it like too extravagant and too flashy. Sometimes the most powerful posters are actually the ones that have the most simple like looking visuals ever. So what's important when you are making your posters is that you are able to deliver a powerful message in the most powerful way possible. So if you can masterfully craft that in the most simple way possible and master the art of simplicity, you can actually bring out and create a very powerful poster. So especially that we are, you know, NGOs, social good communications, social good organizations, it's important na we are able to deliver the message that we want people to be impacted by and to be inspired by. So if we are able to do that through a simple yet very striking poster, then parang hindi ka na nga power poster maker eh. Parang magiging god tier poster maker ka na, in my opinion. So if you're able to master the art of simplicity, then you have gone beyond being a power poster maker. So having said that, I would like to just leave you with this quote by a German artist called Hans Hofmann. So he says that the ability to simplify means to eliminate the unnecessary so that the necessary may speak. So thank you everyone. So that is my talk. So paano maging isang power poster maker?